mistake. Well, good morning, all, and welcome to our continuation. It could go on for a long time of A Treatise on Cosmic Fire in depth. There's no way we're going to totally fathom this particular book. It is a book written on the third ray and the first ray, and it's a book for DK tells us for initiates, but we can gather something from it which is of value. These days, I'm beginning with Great Invocation number 2 because of the ongoing issue concerning the viability of democracy in the United States and by extension throughout the contest between the dweller on the threshold of humanity and the angel of the presence. We're getting very close to the time now when the uh, different states will repair to their capital cities and will make a final determination on the elector votes, which have to be then, I think, sent in within a few days and have to arrive in Washington. The whole thing will be settled by the 6th of January. But of course, all kinds of lawsuits without merit are being pushed forward in the hope of delaying the whole process so that it can be settled in the House of Representatives, where each state receives one vote, and where the number of states with the red advantage, shall we say, exceeds those with the blue advantage, and that would upend the entire election. So we continue with our nightly vigils, at least it's night here in the United States, 8 p.m. GMT when the weekdays come, and 10 p.m. over the weekend. And if there's variation in that due to full moons and other important events, full moons, new moons, etc., we will let you know. So let's all concentrate then on invocation number 2, great invocation number 2, and realize that hierarchy stands for the liberation of humanity. So much enslaved today in various ways, even in a direct and physical way, yet alone an economic way. And the mind, of course, is enslaved by dogma, which simply is believed for centuries without having a real esoteric basis. That's something for which we, I think, will be somewhat responsible to present to humanity a better way of conceiving reality and the relations between the human being, the other kingdoms of nature, the other planets, and our solar system and other solar systems. Let the lords of liberation issue forth. Let them bring succor to the sons of men. Let the rider from the secret place come forth, and coming save. Come forth, O mighty one. Let the souls of men awaken to the light, and may they stand with massed intent. Let the fiat of the Lord go forth. The end of woe has come. Come forth, O mighty one. The hour of service of the saving force has now arrived. Let it be spread abroad, O mighty one. Let light and love and power and death fulfill the purpose of the coming one. The will to save is here. The love to carry forth the work is widely spread abroad. The active aid of all who know the truth is also here. Come forth, O mighty one, and blend these three. Construct a great defending wall. The rule of evil now must end. Thank you. And let us believe and be convinced that some good is being done by our esoteric efforts. I'd like to welcome you, Anna and Catherine, Cindy, Jeff, Hilda, Joe, John, Karen, Leslie, Martine, Nathalie, Nesa, Risto, Raz, Tia, and Zenaidi. Thank you for being here. For some of you, it's the middle of the night, I know. So I really appreciate you taking out the interrupting your sleep and being with us. To forego peace, to forfeit rest, and in the stress of pain, to lose myself and find myself, thus entering into peace. To all this I solemnly pledge myself, invoking my higher self. It's, the very, kind of the very first thing we learn or use when we enter the arcane school. For me, it was a long time ago, almost 50 years. But that mantram of the aspirant, that fiery mantram, is very useful, and it stays with you in the wee hours. Now, let's see where we are here. Yeah, here's where we are. And I want to see if I can do this correctly. I guess this is a little difficult right now. I'm not sure, Michael, how to get this how to get it back to where I was. But so that it's along the side of the page. Doesn't seem to want to go. There it goes. All right. So we're reading in the beginning of the book where he's slowly building up in a way that is not considered the usual occult method. The usual occult method is to build from the top down, but the way this book is designed, he begins with the material aspect and moves into the etheric aspect, and then will come the astral and the mental. And when he finishes that, we'll be into the solar fire. And at the very end of the book, um, he's dealing with spirit, maybe for about 100 pages. So it's a reversed method, and one wonders why he's using that, except that he, I think, expects this book eventually to be read by people with a strong scientific materialistic um, orientation. And he's beginning with what to them is the most real, and then working his way up from that point. Now, you know, if you want to get into other aspects of the book, we have a lot on Makara. All of those commentaries, mostly written, detailed commentaries, prepared over a 5 or 6 year period when I was teaching this class in different countries. And you can, if you want to get into those details, you can do that because there's so very much. Um, and finally, the closing of the book, I simply decided that I had to do audio video commentaries, and not the written kind. Time was running out. So I recommend them to your attention if you want to study occultism in depth. Of course, we just have to realize we are not going to absorb all that Master DK has given to us, and he has said so. I've given you more than you can possibly absorb. And so rather than consult those written commentaries, which are so extensive and so detailed, I'm simply, you know, improvising a little bit off of what is in the book itself. And some things, of course, will be left out uh, compared with when I gave more attention to every little detail. But you can gather that for yourself. Remember that the second ray is called the ray of detailed unity. And DK tells us sometimes we put too much emphasis on the word detail, but it is the divine patterns which emerge in all that detail which are of importance. So last time we had looked at, let's see if I have everything correct. Yeah, I do. I think so. We had looked at this particular chart, and it's fairly complicated. I don't think we need to go into it anymore. It's all about how the different planes and subplanes are generated by the logos, and in this case, I think the solar logos. So I don't think we need that so much. And if I can get back to, it's always getting back to where you want to be. That is the
Michael,
hard
you
point.
can use a back arrow.
And where is that, Michael?
In the icon bar, there's an arrow pointing to the left.
Oh,
Under the menu, there's a bar.
oh yes, 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 yes.
Just
But
click on that left pointing arrow.
well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll try to. No, not for me. Anyway, it'll take too long. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a moment, and then I will go back to trying to share the screen. Yeah, this is the issue right here. So I'm going to. I won't do that again. I'm going to go here to. Sorry for this little delay. Yeah, that will be the one, and it'll be Cosmic Fire, and hopefully this will work. On page 57, yeah, that takes us to the point, and let's see if, yeah, it looks like we are where we belong. But what I need to do, one more thing, is make this a little bit wider. And now,
And you need to share the screen.
yeah. Okay, I just don't know why I'm down there at the bottom. You cannot move a video while people are pinned. Oh, okay. Let's see, and where is the, now I'm having trouble finding my bar, my control bar. Oh, this is not exactly what I want to have done. And I suppose you don't see that screen yet. I can see that. You don't see that screen.
No, we don't. And perhaps your control bar is hidden. So if you take your mouse down to the bottom of your screen,
yeah,
does it show up now?
No, it doesn't. It does not. And oh, now I seem to be able to move that. Okay, let's see if I can. I'm really sorry for this. Oh, look at that. Full screen, gallery view, speaker view. I'm somehow. All right. Are we going to have a session or are we not? Let's see. All right. Let's see if this will work. All right. Now I'm pretty much back where I thought I was before.
Yes, you are.
And yep, there we go. All right. I better leave that bar alone. Don't go to the bar. Okay. All right, friends. Sorry for that little kerfluffle. So just rereading what we had said before. In the etheric body, which is an exact replica of its denser counterpart. Now, you know, when you begin to atom for atom, it sometimes says, we have the organ of active or radiatory fire. And as is well known, the vehicle of prana, that is the etheric body, the organ of active or radiatory fire. All of these are internal fires. This is not the latent fire, this is the active radiatory fire. Its function, related to vitality, I might say, is to store up the rays of radiatory light and heat which are secured from the sun, and to transmit them via the spleen, which is the third aspect of the pranic triangle. You know, there's a center between the shoulders, which is part of the pranic triangle. You can look around page 170 of this book, and there is a middle center just above the diaphragm, and then there is the spleen below the diaphragm. And to transmit them via the spleen to all parts of the physical body. Hence, in the future, it will come to be recognized that the spine and the spleen are of the utmost importance to the physical well-being of man. Now, certain chiropractors recognize this now, and naturopaths and people who deal with cranial sacral therapy, um, they recognize this and they practice it accordingly. But this is coming in terms of sustaining the vitality of the human being, which will be easier and easier to do in a seventh ray age with more seventh ray physical bodies, which have a certain resilience and which recover more quickly and which process vitality in a better way in general. So this has to do with the physical well-being of man, and that when the spinal column is duly adjusted and aligned, sounds chiropractic, doesn't it? Well, the word chiro means priest. So they knew something about this in the Egyptian times and probably earlier. And when the spleen is freed from congestion and in a healthy condition, there will be little trouble in the dense physical body. Now, he tells us that people who have taken the third degree are pretty well free of the usual ills to which flesh is heir. In other words, they don't get sick in the normal way, usually. So, something about this spinal adjustment and splenic cleansing can relate to that degree. When the physical furnace burns brightly, and when the fuel of the body, see the physical furnace will have to do with the latent fire. These are all internal fires, both radiatory and latent. They are all internal fires. When the physical furnace burns brightly, and when the fuel of the body, think of that, the pranic rays, is adequately assimilated, and he'll get into that when he starts to talk about the difficulty that some people have in assimilating this fuel, the human frame will function as desired. Now, it's interesting, he says he hopes for the day or anticipates the day when the natural vitality of the human being will closely resemble that, and he uses an example of the natural vitality of the South Sea Islander. He seems to think that they have a vitality which can be emulated and which the methods of our civilization have set to the side. He also tells us that when we're wearing certain types of clothing, we should leave the pranic chakra between the shoulder blades free so that it can absorb the fuel here. It can absorb the pranic rays directly. Now, maybe in some of the warmer climates where perhaps vitality is easier to come by, um, that is the type of clothing that is worn. Anyway, he considers it to be beneficial for the entire human frame. The new schools are being created in part because the physical body is too weak. Emotional body unstable, as I've said, and the mental body is too concrete. The new esoteric schools of meditation are supposed to remedy that situation. So you might wonder why we're beginning all of this on the foundational level, but this is Our work is about the externalization of the hierarchy and the reappearance of the Christ and the manifestation of the kingdom of God right here on terra firma, as it were, right here on the densest levels. And so we have to have our anchor. Now, that doesn't mean to give all of our attention, as is so much done these days, to the body. We are almost obsessed by body consciousness, but it does mean that when we attempt to do spiritual things and improve the spiritual condition on the lower planes, we have to have our anchor, as it were. And the anchor has to be in good condition. So we came this far last time. I like to do an overlap occasionally and catch other things that we have not caught. Um, the subject of the blending of the two fires, which is complete in a normal and healthy person. Now we're talking about the internal fires, both latent and radiatory. Okay, that's what we're talking about now. Should engross the attention of the modern physician, who is going to turn more and more towards the etheric body and the source of vitalization. There are some Taoistic books that tell us, that when the vitality has fled, then uh, the human being is subject to the 10,000 illnesses. So there's so much about immunity, and it's so important today, given this pandemic, that is relating to the condition of the etheric body. Um, okay, the modern physician. He will then concern himself with the removal of nerve congestion or material congestion so as to leave a free channel for the inner warmth. And by the way, some of that can be done via color therapy. The ridding of the channels of congestion is sometimes under the province of color and tone, which will be one of the first methods of healing to prove its success. The fourth method of subtle healing, of vibratory healing. You can find that in the esoteric healing book, where at the end he gives these rather arcane ancient methods, as if they were from the old commentary regarding healing. And the fourth ray method, perhaps because in 2025 the fourth ray begins to come in strongly from its monadic aspect, perhaps because of that, one of these methods, that method, will be accessible first. Now, back in the old days, when initiation was uh, taking place in Lemuria, um, this was considered a kind of first initiation, the blending of the radiatory and the latent fire of the fire of dense physicality and the fire of the ethers. Bringing those together was considered the first initiation. It was not all about the Christ consciousness in those days, not at all. The greater types of initiations of that caliber and nature began to enter in middle middle Atlantean times for those who could take those more major, and they're called monastic initiations. This blending, which is now a natural and usual growth in every human being, thus far the race has progressed, was one of the signs of attainment or of initiation in an earlier solar system. And then I suppose it was recapitulated in the Lemurian phase. He's not telling us which earlier solar system. Our particular solar system was preceded by four others, one of which, the most recent, um, was a major solar system developing intelligence and the relationship of intelligence to matter. So maybe, who knows, maybe it was that one. And not much is said, if anything, about the earlier three solar systems which preceded the major solar system which came before our own. Just as initiation and liberation are marked in this solar system by a blending of the fires of the body, see, it's always the way when initiation comes, a higher point of tension and a lower point of tension are blended and become smoothly uh, interactive. So often we live in a situation in our personalities which are filled with cleavages, and it's very difficult to get different parts of ourselves functioning together in an optimal manner. Well, with the understanding of the laws of integration and or techniques of integration, as DK refers to them, we're going to be much better at getting a holistic interaction between the otherwise sometimes uncooperative aspects of ourselves. So, anyway, the blending of the radiatory fire and the latent fire was one of the signs of initiation in an earlier solar system and appears to have been recapitulated in the Lemurian system. In a way, the Lemurian root race. In a way, our particular solar system is very much keyed to the emotional Buddhic Atlantean vibration. And of course, there's much mentality that's growing with the causal body of our planetary logos and with the causal body of our solar logos. But it won't be until the next solar system that real mentality and the power of the will come in together. Just as initiation and liberation are marked in this solar system by the blending of the fires of the body, of the mind, and of the spirit, for those who are truly advanced, all three of those can be blended. For others, there will be a wait. So, in an earlier cycle of attainment, which is another way of looking at what a solar system is, so in an earlier um, cycle, I see, attainment was marked by the blending of the latent fires of matter and the radiatory or active fires, and then their union with the fires of mind. So it's sounding a bit more like the immediately previous solar system in which some of the earlier types of initiation could be taken. The mental or green solar system, a major system, it's sounding like he's talking about that one. In the earlier period, the effects in manifestation of the divine flame were so remote and deeply hidden as to be scarcely recognizable, though dimly there. And maybe there were some initiates of that time who could reach into the divine flame, but in general, it was not a factor to be considered. Its correspondence can be seen in the animal kingdom, in which instinct holds the intuition in latency. Although sometimes, when you see animals behave in a certain way, you could say it's instinctual. It almost seems intuitive. They seem quite intelligent. We have a um, a door opening cat in our house, and definitely, cats are on the third ray and the fourth ray. He has both references. And this very intelligent cat has a brother who is all love for a cat of its nature. And this one that opens doors is all intelligence. And you can just see how the claws of the cat are going to turn into hands eventually. All right, so she's way ahead of herself, and we have to watch her very carefully because she knows how to go out the door, and then she knows how to come in the door as well. Little examples of things growing toward a fuller expression. Anyway, instinct and intuition, and the correspondence here. Intuition is deeply latent, just the way in the earlier system the divine flame was deeply latent. Um, so instinct holds the intuition in latency, and the spirit dimly overshadows. Now, you could say, if we want to carry it forward, what is there any correspondence going on today in our system? And I would say that for most, the divine will, the true nature of will, is going to be held in latency uh, as the intuition develops in this particular solar system. The spirit overshadowed in those days dimly, and we have the will dimly sensed. DK assures us we don't really know what it is. Yet all is part of a divine whole. Okay. The subject of radiatory heat of the macrocosmic and microcosmic systems will be dealt with in detail in a later subdivision. You notice how DK is very precise in his subdivisions and in his outlines. He's giving so much information that if we did not have the clarifying subdivisions, we would be completely at sea. And here, of course, are the four types of atoms that he definitely treats when considering the law of analogy and the more detailed law of correspondences. So here we will only deal with the latent interior fire. See, they're all interior, but the lowest is the latent fire of the sun, solar logos, planetary logos, the vehicle of man, the human being, and the atom. He makes a big jump from man to the atom, and in between these four, which are looked at in analogy, we find others that could be inserted. We find, let's say, planetary. We find kingdoms, kingdoms of nature here. We find planetary chains. We find planetary globes. And then maybe we begin to find man. And between man and the atom are many different uh, types of entities, we might say, that also would have the law of analogy applied to them in this series. But he tries to keep it simple. Maybe we will question whether it is simple. and deals with the sun, planet, man, and the atom. Those are the four types of atoms that he particularly attends to in this book. We must remember that in both the astral and mental sheaths, and this is an interesting point, there exists the counterparts of the centers as found in the physical body. Now, you can kind of see this right from this map, and here are the counterparts. There we have these 7 chakras. The Ajna center is not here, but I think it will be found on the one of the subplanes uh, of the highest normal subplane. And there seems to be a one-to-one correspondence here between the chakras of the astral body and those of the uh, etheric physical body. It's always in the etheric part of the plane, which is the upper 4 subplanes of the plane, that these vortices are tending to appear. And when it comes to the dense physical plane, what appears in relation to the vortices are the glands. And he deals with that quite a bit in esoteric healing. We don't know what the correspondence to the glands may be on the lower 3 subplanes of the astral plane, but we do know what the correspondence is to the chakras. And sometimes, interestingly, these chakras found on the astral plane, which he actually does enumerate in esoteric healing. Oh, it's either page 51 or 151, somewhere in there. They have different rays associated with them than the chakras in the normal etheric level of the etheric physical plane. Now, only 3 chakras, 4 really here, are found on the mental plane, and they are still on the lower mental plane. But when the causal body has disappeared, it is possible that what will be created in its place, a kind of aspect of the Maya Virupa, what will be created will have its vortices. And as I've said before, on the etheric part of the Buddhic and the Atmic, and I presume monadic and logoic levels, you will have corresponding centers of fire that he has just not seen fit to indicate here on the map. I mean, and I get this inference from the idea that 35 vortices of fire make a master. So you can understand that on the atmic plane, there would have to be vortices of fire on the 4 higher levels of the atmic plane. And why stop there? Because the logoic plane uh, has to do with the Chohan of the 7th degree, and probably all of the prototypes of these lower chakric vortices begins on the logoic plane as far as the cosmic physical plane is concerned. And beyond that, when we're dealing with cosmic astral and cosmic mental, it's just all sheer speculation. He shows us basically nothing. But we can understand that, or at least I seem to understand that from the very top of the universe, using a peculiar phrase, vortices are coming down and make their way into the very lowest levels, including as found within the atom, and we don't know whether in the subatomic particles. All right, so that's the idea there. And these are the 4 factors in relation to which analogy is drawn. And I've been very detailed about this in the written commentaries because, well, it 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 really is exacting. So you can probably find that, on Makara. And uh, my attempt to draw the correspondences between all of these according to what DK has said. So where did we stop? We said we must remember that in both the astral and mental sheaths, which I just showed you, there exist the counterparts of the centers as found in the physical body. Uh, and for the physical body, he's including the etheric there. And he's basically saying that for the moment, aspects of the egoic lotus, which are not technically man's chakras, substitute for those chakras until the higher mental plane is reorganized and the egoic lotus is, destroyed, and the solar angels return to their solar source. These centers concern matter and its evolution. Because after all, we are when we're talking about the astral plane, when we're talking about the mental plane, normal mental plane, we are dealing with the dense physical body of the um, solar logos, the dense physical body, hence matter, okay? And when we're dealing with the lower 18 subplanes, then for sure we're talking about the dense physical body of the planetary logos. We'll just stick to our planetary logos for the moment. So these centers that he's telling you about here concern matter and its evolution. One fundamental statement can be laid down, anent. He's the only writer I know who uses the word anent. The internal fires of these four, all these four: sun, planet, man, and atom. And then maybe we can do one of these. Uh, there exists in the sun, in the planet, in man, and in the atom a central point of heat, or if I might use so limiting and inappropriate a term, a central, notice the word cavern. Cavern. This is going to eventually point towards the hollow earth theory. As I said, much advanced by the Master Hilarion in books supposedly related to him. You never know about some of these books, whether it's a disciple of the Master that's writing on his own or whether the Master has contributed something. But Hilarion is one of those who has spoken in that book, The Light of the Soul. At least traditionally, that is accepted. So there's a central cavern, a hollowness filled with fire, or nucleus of heat. And this central nucleus reaches the bounds of its sphere of influence. Its ring pass not by means of a threefold channel. Now, immediately you start thinking about the threefold Kundalini, and you think about the fire at the base of the spine, especially in its latent version, not its radiatory version. Now we have, oh my goodness, um, this is a rather from thoughts on the Gita, and I wonder if in uh, I'll switch back so you can see in just a second. Um, I'm looking at some of these detailed things that I've done, um, and wondering whether we should get into it or not. Well, anyway, here is footnote number 17 at least, and maybe it's going to be easier to see. We can at least read through it, even if the terms are uh, from yogic philosophy. And who was it that wrote? He was a kind of a colleague of HPB, and I can't think of his name now. He was, I think, a Hindu. He was certainly from India, and it's not, giving us his name. And I've always known that name, but I don't know it now. The name Das comes to me, but it's not correct. Anyway, footnote 17. Um, the divine, maybe somebody knows, huh? I just saw that. Bhagavan.
Bhagavan Das.
Uh, well, he was the one who wrote on the emotional body. This is a different guy. I think. But maybe you could quickly look up some thoughts on the Gita and who wrote it. Um, and if you're correct, great. But I think it's a different. I think it's a different man. Um, the divine essence that pervading the entire universe of millions of solar system, well, a lot more than that, is caught up by our sun and passes out in a manifested form to the utmost boundaries of our solar system. It apparently is the fuel, so that this manifested essence may be the basic soil of the growth, preservation, and destruction of our worlds. That divine essence is simple nadam of our yogic philosophy, and that nadam or om subsequently manifests itself as 7 streams. This unmanifested is manifested or born by the subsequent ramifications. These streams are the 7 vowels or 7 notes. These 7 vowels and notes have special correlations with the 7 Vedic meters. Those would be most interesting. We know a few. Since in the Vishnu Purana, Parasara describes the Vedic meters as the coursers, that means horses, of the solar essence. Well, this is not easy to unravel, but we get the idea of the septonate once again, and of some kind of vibration which nourishes our solar system. The pseudonym, the dreamer. A Brahmin. He's a Brahmin, all right, but that's not. Gosh, I always have that name on the tip of my tongue, and I have the book, Some Thoughts on the Gita, and they're in a totally different part of the house, so I can't. Or maybe they're even in storage. I don't know. I can't run and find out. But he was a close companion of HBB, and he was the man, obviously a first-rate type, who asked his master to precipitate all his karma at once, karma of a certain kind. And for whatever reason, the master did this. And the man died of a terrible disease, which was akin to Hodgkin's lymphoma. I've seen examples of that type of disease, and it's really hideous. T. Suba-Ro. That's it. You got it, John. T. Suba-Ro. Yeah, that's the one. And Bhagavan Das was another important author who wrote on the condition of the astral body. And very fifth-rate treatment of the entire types of responses you could expect in the astral body. So DK also recommends his writing. Now, how shall we not forget that again? T. Suba-Ro. That's right. All right. So anyway, the sustaining energy is what we're talking about here in 7 different forms. And one of the things that appeals to me most is to look at the 7 meters of the Veda. Now, into English poetry, a few meters have survived. We don't know, are they the Vedic meters, but maybe there's a correspondence, you know, the iambic, ta-tum, 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 you know, 5 of those together, and trochaic, anapestic, and something that begins with a D. But anyway, it comes out ta-tum, 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 and also dum, ta-tum, ta-tum, ta-tum. Is that trochaic? And then there's ta-ta-tum, 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 and dum, ta-ta-tum, ta-ta-tum. I'm feeling really dumb as I as I try to remember these. But the fact that there would be 3 more would be very interesting. So, you know, some of you are familiar with the ragas and Indian music in general, and you know the amazing complexity of the rhythms that these musicians use, and especially the drummers. It's really a science, and it's a science, you know, obviously along the musical line, and it's very exacting. So we still have, you know, a lot to learn here. Now, um, so you can tell I'm not really going to try to get into this without more depth of study, but I do believe that somewhere here I may have, I may have done so to a degree, to a degree, and at least suggested some ideas that I'm not going to get into right now. But in these numbers from 70 to 78, 76, I think I've commented in greater detail on what that footnote may mean. Okay, now we're getting near the end. We are near the end, and I think the thing to do would be to I think it's too much right now to get into the sun, the planet, the man, and the atom of substance. And then we get into a new section, but maybe next time we might be able to finish that up and go as far as this Roman numeral 2, fire elementals and devas. We have to use a lot of Ray 5 here, if we can, and keep our facts straight. And we have to realize that the Tibetan is able to see these things. Um, Gosh, that word cavern keeps on coming up, and I think we're really going to have to examine that in relation to the hollow earth theory. Maybe I'll just read one paragraph just to give us a little bit of a segue. So there is a threefold channel, and we have that in our Ida, Pingala, and Sushumna channels, which are etheric physical channels having to do with Kundalini. So he focuses on the sun, and I'm just going to read one paragraph, and that's it. The sun. Within the sun, you might ask, how does he know? Okay. Right at its very heart is a sea of fire or heat, but not a sea of flame. Herein may lie a distinction that perhaps will convey no meaning to some. That's most of us, I suppose, unless somebody has an idea about this. Um, Sometimes flame is used to indicate the lowest form of fire. And sometimes, as when we're speaking of the divine flame, it represents something very high from which fire or heat emanates. So we have to see which this is. It is the center of the sphere and the point of fiercest internal burning. Aha, yeah, so he's using flame in a lower sense, but has little relation to the flames or burning gases, whatever you care to use, whatever terms you care to use, that are generally understood to exist wherever the sun is considered. This whole study of what the sun really is and how it's related to a state we call plasma, and how it's kind of an intermediary between the external fire and a much more internal fire, is really worth the study. So it has little relation to the flames or burning gases, whatever terms you care to use, that are generally understood to exist whenever the sun is considered. I mean, crudely, we consider it to be kind of a ball of fire, but it has a much more sophisticated kind of constituency, constitution, and it has etheric, um, an etheric structure, we're told, that is a series of interlocking circles or maybe interlocking spheres. So it's quite different from the triangular interlocking that we are attempting to achieve. It is the point of fiercest incandescence, and the objective sphere of fire is but the manifestation of that internal combustion. So it's somewhat beyond access to our normal understanding of fire and flame. This central heat radiates its warmth to all parts of the system by means of a triple channel or through its rays of approach, which in their totality express the idea of the heat of the sun. And then we can get into what that triple channel means for the sun, for the planet, for man. We have some idea perhaps, and even for the atom. Now, when you look at the atom of Babbitt, uh, which was pictorially constructed in the later 19th century, he was, I understand, a student of Master K.H. We see again a triple kind of centrality that is analogous to the Ida Pingala and Shushumna of man, and I don't know if we have names for that triple channel when it comes to the planet. Well, we have certain analogies here: prana, electrical fluid, and productive substance. This is a little bit beyond the science of our present day, but as I say, will be absorbed by those scientists who see the link in the newly developing science and what is written in A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. So here is where we will end our reading for the moment. And so this will be, unless we are usurped by some sort of more essential study, it will be on the 18th of December, getting quite close then to the solstice. 18th of December, begin. And ended on the 11th of December. Okay, so that should help us orient ourselves. I'm always asking Michael, where are we? And most often he knows. All right. Okay, friends. Now it's time to consider what we've said, or if not what we've said, then some factor in occultism which is perhaps related, but is at least related to the occultism that we are studying. So, where are we with that, Michael? Is there anybody that may be interested in asking or stating a principle, or just saying something in general?
Well, as people are formulating their questions or comments, perhaps you'd like to go back to the chart, the Constitution of Man showing the egoic lotus, and look at the chakras.
Let's see now. Yeah, the big one, right? Okay,
Yeah,
hold on. Yeah, I think I know what you mean.
and yes, well, go back. Doesn't have to
Back.
be that one, because we can look at the etheric centers, the astral centers,
Okay,
and
okay, I
then the
know.
mental centers.
I know what you mean. This is it.
Yes. And perhaps as we look at the egoic lotus on the three higher subplanes of the mental plane, the knowledge petals, the love petals, and the sacrifice petals are representative or some kind of correspondence to the throat, the heart, and head centers on the mental plane.
Yeah, I would think that that is actually that is the case. And when we have the completed man in his body of fire, when we get approximately to page 166, 169 in this book, we will see that there will eventuate a body of flame. It will not include the egoic lotus anymore, but as a substitute for what will then appear, the three circles found in the egoic lotus, especially within the 9-petaled part of it, do serve to hold the place of what will later develop. Yeah, I think that's very true. And there's always a question of why the Ajna Center is not listed, but I think that gets into the question of the subplanes. Sometimes we think, well, here's a plane, and there are 7. It's a solar plane, like, let's say, the astral plane or something like that. It holds 7 subplanes, and 49 subplanes. And when you add the 49 times 7, you get 343. And those are the areas of vibratory distinction. The areas of vibratory distinction when it comes to examining the cosmic physical plane. We just don't know how the cosmic astral plane is organized, but from a little hint about the cosmic mental plane, namely that the egoic lotus of our planetary logos is on the third subplane of the cosmic mental plane, and that the egoic lotus of our solar logos is found on the first subplane. That's a real departure. First subplane of the cosmic mental plane. We know, therefore, that subplanes must exist. Now, whether there are further differentiations and all of that, we can suppose that it is so, but we don't know. We don't know for certain.
That law of correspondence is a wonderful thing.
Yeah, yeah, and a bit more detailed than the looser law of analogy, apparently. So we can fill in a lot of blanks, using the laws of analogy and correspondence, even though they are not accurate, um, necessarily accurate in an entirely detailed manner. In other words, we've all heard this statement about analogy, at least. You cannot push the analogy too far. Now, maybe with correspondences, there's much more detailed kind of relationship that is more accurate. Maybe you can push it farther.
I call it an inexact, detailed reflection.
Sounds good. Sounds like what do we have? Gosh, what's the name of that? Um, you have you have that reflection, and I can't think of the word, but it becomes as it descends less and less exact.
Well, we are shadows of that reflection.
Yeah, 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 that's it. And oftentimes he does use the term, the original, the reflection, and then the shadow, and they become less precise as we. It's is it gosh, is it a word like it's not hylozoistic and it's not holistic. I'm trying to think. It's been a very popular term lately, and I can't think of it. But it it shows how these reflections work, and it's just another obvious word from my too old brain here. And just the way T. Subaru showed up, maybe we'll be able to get that term, which shows the descending reflections. Um, no, it's just a simple word, and we use it all the time. Maybe someone knows. John, do you? All right.
And, and while that is percolating, Sri Yantra Veronica writes, I wonder if the cavern spoken of is the same as the cave of Brahman that we meditate on in the Babaji lineage. We would be in unity in that space.
Well, I just don't know, but that is an interesting consideration. Certain schools of meditation have their signatures. When you're working with the Muktananda method, this something called the blue pearl comes up, and it is of importance in the system of meditation. And you called this the cave of Brahma. Was that it? What was it, Michael?
The
That you said?
cave of Brahman,
Yeah,
yes.
it might be. I'm not. well enough acquainted with that system to know whether there is a correspondence, but perhaps so. Anyway, within this cavern of fire, a triple kind of heat goes forth, which warms and vitalizes the whole frame. And it seems like every atom that we are studying here actually has um, a correspondence to that central cavern. So, that in itself is of interest. And if for the sun it is a place of fiercest incandescence, then we can imagine something analogous when it comes to the planet. There's all kinds of, wonderful ideas about those who just keep going down, 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 into the planet, and as if it's some kind of occult planetary lore that a few people know about. And there are hints about that. But within man himself, the central cavern, and within the atom, the analogy seems to hold good. So, what terminology may be used in different systems, it's hard to say. So much of our confusion arises because we don't have corresponding terminology. At a certain point, Master Moria really throws up his hands, and he says, "Why so many words for the same thing?" He's giving us the first ray approach here, and uh, and maybe he would say, "Why so many things for the same word?" Um, but we have terminological issues, which, when we settle them, we'll be able to communicate a lot better on these matters.
And John continues along the same line of thought. Some electric universe scientists are speculating that the core of the Earth is a dynamic sphere of fiery plasma. This, if validated, will replace the current prevailing theory that the inmost center of the Earth is molten iron.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think any reader, uh, careful reader of DK and some of the other masters that have written legitimately, in other words, it really comes from a master. And then, on the other hand, those who read the present scientific estimations have noticed this this contrast, and it would indeed be a very significant contrast. And Master Kuthumi seems to tell us that there are just many revisions of scientific thought which are due and which are imminent. And he talks a lot about geology in this respect, and I suppose about planetary history and its timing as well. So this would all come under the category of the adjustment of ideas subject to occult impression, when that impression is accepted as having some validity. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, John.
And then John added, and further speculation has it that the center of the sun and the center of the earth are electrically connected.
Well, okay. What can I say except that all of that is possible? It's a bit like I'm thinking about the atomic subplane connection in our big graphic charts. Apparently, there is a way to go from subplane to subplane, from atomic subplane to atomic subplane to atomic subplane, without having to venture through all of the other subplanes. So there is a similarity there, and the possibility then of going from jewel to jewel to jewel as every um, chakra has its own jewel in the lotus, and there is sometimes considered a direct first ray method of traveling or of emphasizing um, the different chakras in a more direct manner. Terrible sentence, but in other words, more direct connection between the chakras via the jewels. Okay, what else?
Okay, and before getting to Joe's comment question, Vera's hand is raised, and you should be able to unmute yourself, Vera.
Yeah.
There
Yes.
you go.
Yeah. Recently, I was listening to YouTube some quantum physicist Nassim Haramein, and he was linking the physics and the spirituality, and to hear how a different a person from a different scientific field um, was confirming or evidencing what the esoteric teachings and blue books are. Like, for example, about consciousness, that the uh, evolution or uh, of consciousness involves feedback loop, that the universe informs itself, and or that he was linking time and memory as we live, or the events are happening, that we leave information on the structure of space.
Hmm. Well,
Another point,
yeah,
yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
once the matter is connected, its energy remains connected even when the physical matter moves apart. And so there was about those experiments with particles, moving
Yes,
particles.
yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Where they don't know they seem to respond to each other, though there's no
yes,
known mechanism by which they would be actually contacting each other.
yeah.
No known mechanism. Yeah. Well, okay. There are some of these scientists. DK says the true occultist is on the fifth ray. Okay, and they will break into the necessity for the existence of the higher planes, and the ether that was done away with back in the late 19th century will return in a new guise. And the method of connection, which is subtle, will be demonstrated, or at least hypothesized and probably proven. So, there are some people that are making the bridge. That's all I can say. And if you have a very healthy fifth ray interest, you'd be following what they're talking about. We're still dealing very much with the etheric physical plane.
Yeah.
But we don't imagine perhaps that consciousness has its own sphere in the soul. We don't imagine the soul of the world, the old idea of the anima mundi. We still do not fathom that there are astral and mental and Buddhic and on types of atoms. All of those still lie farther ahead, but the trend is correct. The direction is correct. So, who knows how long in this very electrical age, the Aquarian age, we will have to wait before the idea of the cosmic physical plane and all of its divisions is somehow substantiated. But I think it's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Thank you, Vera. Thank you.
Now to Joe, writing, I'm always intrigued with the exoteric, esoteric, and hierarchical rulers of Leo as they relate to the sun. I imagine the exoteric and esoteric rulers correspond to the latent and radiatory energies as a question.
Well, I don't know if I would limit this to a a purely physical etheric manifestation. There may be a correspondence. The planet he seems to hint at exoterically is Jupiter. And Jupiter has a certain fourfoldness which relates it to the densest of the physical planes. Um, and then, of course, Neptune and Uranus. But it seems to me that when you're dealing with an esoteric ruler and an exoteric ruler, we have to move far beyond simply the etheric physical. We have to move beyond the astral, beyond the mental. We have to move into the realm of the soul. And then the fourfoldness of Jupiter would represent the personality in the sense of lower mind, astral vehicle, etheric, and physical. And then the esoteric ruler would take us definitely into the soul, that part of the anima mundi, that part of the soul of the world, which it may pertain to other kingdoms, but at this time pertains to humanity. So I would look at the relationship there between the exoteric, esoteric, and hierarchical as representing personality, consciousness, and being or spirit. That's what seems to make the most sense to me. Now, if you want to compress and you want to limit yourself to the realm of personality, uh, or even to the realm of interior fire, latent or radiatory, maybe you could work something out in a very compressed correspondence. But it seems to me that we're dealing with a much more expansive correspondence when it comes to those particular rulers, and that the realm of the personality is covered by fourfold Jupiter, which is only hinted at. And you have to decide whether you think the hint is sufficient. I think it's not an easy question.
Okay, and going back to the egoic lotus, Anna shares, then the jewel and its three petals correspond to the three channels of the sun, to which we have to reconnect.
Uh, yes, there could be a correspondence. These are actually, if we look at how the egoic lotus is built, we find that the building of the 9 petals of the egoic lotus, of which there are 3 types, um, are built on the basis of energy from the abstract mental plane, from the lowest part of the triad. We find, however, that the synthesis petals are built from buddhi, and we find a connection, direct connection between the monad and the jewel. So there are several types of correspondences we can work out. When we look at the 3 channels, we can probably divide the egoic lotus into 3 parts. The 9 ordinary petals, the 3 synthesis petals, and the 1 jewel. And maybe we can work out a correspondence there as well. But when it comes to the synthesis petals of the egoic lotus, they are very ethereal and are Buddhically derived. They have something to do with the cosmic ethers, of course, but not so much with the ethers that we consider to be latent, uh, the latent radiatory, no, the radiatory fire. They don't have so much to do with that, Maybe they have something to do with radiatory fire on a cosmic level, but they are not derived from a etheric physical source in the normal sense. We have the etheric plane, active radiatory fire. We have the dense physical plane, which is latent, and those three synthesis petals are not derived from those sources. But maybe there is an analogy. Okay.
And then Leslie has shared 2 links to the Lucis Trust Electric Bridge talks sources. One being The Electric Universe, The Human Story, and the other being The Electric Universe, an arcane school talk.
You know, there's a man who works there now. He's very strong on the fifth ray. I mean, he seems to be the real thing when it comes to the fifth ray. And I wonder if he is associated with these talks. Anyway, thank you, Leslie, for pointing them out. It's something we can look at. Lawrence. Yep, that's it. That's it. This is my morning for name forgetting. Okay, but we have talked to him, and he seems to bring in a very necessary and very different approach than the normal esotericists found on different rays. His fifth ray is very strong. Yeah. Thank you.
And that is, oh, John says Lawrence Newey.
That's it. That's it. I'm glad these names are being provided for me because I'll totally forget them, even though I had a nice conversation with him at some point. But this is what happens, when you start. Well, never mind. Okay, Lawrence Newey, that's correct. Now, as a matter of fact, he talks about the mysteries. DK does. And he says there's a whole series of mysteries that are not covered by the usual presentation of the mysteries through ritual, through masonry, and that sort of thing. And he cites particularly the mysteries having to do with electricity. So this is a really important area in a fifth ray age that is coming up because of course, it is Aquarius that will be the major source before long of the fifth ray. It passes through that particular constellation. And all of this more advanced electrical speculation and verification, I might add, will be one of the features of the Aquarian age. Now, maybe it's not, DK says, I'm not writing about that because if I needed the information, I would go to one of my colleagues, a fifth ray master, and I would find out. But he also said that Alice Bailey did not have in her mind the kind of substance, the kind of terminology that would have allowed him to work with her in a more fifth ray manner. And who knows, maybe the Tibetan himself prefers other rays to work upon, but obviously he knows these things. Okay, is that it then?
That appears to be it at the present.
Okay. All right, then let's.
Whoops. Now John has raised his hand.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
You bet.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Before we end here, I was thinking back to the beginning of this session, when in that invocation that was read, the line stood out to me today: "The end of woe has come." And since we were talking so much about the sun, I was thinking about the heart of the sun. How could we, what is the answer? What is the path to the end of woe for humanity upon this earth? Is it connected in some way with this discussion of the solar energy of the sun, perhaps the heart of the sun?
There's a scorpionic connection, which is interesting. When we mount the fixed cross, we are subjected to some pretty terrific processes. The first is blinding light of Taurus. The second is the fiery pain of Leo. And the third is apt for the question. It's called the bitter woe of Scorpio. And then, of course, we have liberation in Aquarius. But it's woe to me is a rending process, a kind of a drawing and quartering, a tearing apart, which comes under the fourth ray of Scorpio. And when we can use that fourth ray in its harmonious aspect, and when it begins to converge upon unity, and when the second ray becomes, as it will become, the sole ray of humanity, I don't think it is yet, then this rending, tearing, painful process will come to an end. And of course, when we talk about the heart of the sun, we're not really talking about it, are we, in some kind of material sense? We're talking about the love wisdom aspect of the solar logos reflected in a series of hearts that is given in esoteric astrology, and finally in our own monadic heart center. The monad itself is a kind of heart center, but finally in the egoic lotus, when there is soul infusion and an intuitive grasp of all of the immersion that we have been experiencing, then this woe will cease and the great second ray energy will take over, which will bring the end of the rending process, which to me is the woe, the pain. So I don't think we should look for anything particularly physical. I think this is a psychological factor related to Scorpio, the fourth ray to harmony, and the eventual second ray, and the Christ bringing that ray in, the second ray, in so strongly that the necessary healing, holing can occur. That to me is the end of woe. And of course, it was very specific then. The war was tearing everybody apart. And Mars was at a very high level of expression in relation to Scorpio. And it was just, creating horror everywhere. Now, that is the specific type of woe which peace, the spirit of peace, the second ray of the Christ, could bring, ending that rending process.
The tales of woe are very much overwhelming into the current news cycle.
Yes, they are. They are suffering. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And perhaps the positive statement, the corollary to the end of woe would be the famous Christmas carol, "Joy to the World."
Yeah, that is the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. Yeah, there's something so incredibly uplifting about that time of year. But let's just say people are suffering because there is a rending process between what they really are and what they're made to experience. And we see all these stories, don't we, of people that have gone through tremendous suffering due to the COVID, especially now, and some other things, but the COVID is in the news and the suffering it has caused. There will come the soul vibration, which will heal this. But first, the reason for the COVID, which is probably a planned epidemic, I might say, has to be recognized, and humanity must support each other and be rid of the frictions which are causing constant pain. I think that will be coming about because I think, we may be on the verge of a vaccine and so forth, but there's still more to the suffering of humanity, and especially in a country like the United States with its second-ray soul. He says much suffering lies in store. It also houses the main headquarters of the United Nations, which I think the Christ may use as part of his headquarters, at least. So there's much still to be done to end that pain.
One last thought to add. The perhaps joy in this epic of human history can only be a fleeting flash in human consciousness, because when we're all embedded in a sea of suffering, that light is pretty much absorbed in our picking up, of that. In the line from The Voice of the Silence, can there be bliss when all that lives must suffer?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that is a question. Of course, I think there is, on the higher levels, certain realization. And we're told it's a joy to do the Master's work. Joy comes from many places, and it can be experienced on a higher level, even when one is suffering in a personality sense. But of course, then the Bodhisattva impulse compels us to enter the sphere of suffering. And DK tells us that the masters acutely feel a kind of exquisite agony when they look at humanity and wonder, will the right choice be made? So they are so ultra sensitive. They are, even though they have the joy and bliss of the higher worlds, they have the agony of identification. It's somewhere, at the end of Dina 1, where he talks about, you imagine that we are in our safe retreats and everything is fine with us, but we identify with you so much and with your condition that it is for us an exquisite agony. And, we have that to look forward to, and we learn of what's called the sufferings of the Christ, right? I mean, the fellowship of Christ's sufferings. So, both are true simultaneously, it seems to me.
One of the nicknames for the Christ was the Man of Sorrows.
Yep. And acquainted with grief.
Yes.
If we go to the wonderful Messiah by Handel, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. Yeah, and Jesus wept. And was it Jesus or was it the Christ? Both are simultaneously true. Yeah. Well, thanks, John. Nice to see you here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we are perhaps, Michael, at that point?
I believe we are.
Okay, let's...
Or the great invocation.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. And we'll even display it. Why not? Oh, it is displayed. Okay. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We'll continue tonight with our Dissipation of Glamour work. That'll be a go-to webinar at 6 p.m. GMT, and then at 8 p.m. GMT, we'll continue with our USA vigil. The time is getting close, and for the confirmation of a new administration, hopefully more closely aligned with soul objectives. So we'll see some of you then, and many blessings, lots of love to everyone. And let's see here. Yeah, and thank you, everybody. All right, I will pause the recording, and then Michael can turn off the program. I'll see you.